Okay, this is part 2 of the 3 videos we need to finish off the Flickr application, the basic GUI interface. Remember, we have got another section to this Flickr app where we're going to be adding material design. But in this section, with these 3 videos, we're adding the basic GUI interface, which we're going to enhance at a later stage with material design. But for now, we're just doing the basic GUI functionality. So let's get into that. Okay, so continuing on, we now need to have a list of our photos. So we're going to store that as a list photos, or list of photo objects to be precise. And we'll call that photos list. We also need a context, which we'll talk about a little later. Context, and it should be ready to be proper naming conventions. We'll call that M photos list. Okay, we now need a public constructor. We're going to use a constructor and we'll just use that as to start with. So we're going to pass the list of photos, which is good, but let's also pass a context because we'll need a context. Context. And we'll call this one list. Photo is correct, but let's just get rid of that and call it photos list because that's, I guess, a little bit more accurate. And we'll do, no surprises there, we're going to go M context equals context, just setting the variables, and this dot photos list equals photos list. Oops, content, not context. Text. Okay, that's better. Okay, I'm going to hold down and do a Control O, which I believe is the same for both platforms. When you do a Control O, that gives you a list of methods you can override. So it is dependent on where your cursor is, but I find it incredibly handy to, firstly, if you're browsing to see what methods are available, but secondly, if you know which one it is, but you don't know what the parameters are, etc., you can just literally find it and it will sort of add them for you. So in this case, I want to override on create view holder. So I'm just going to press enter, and you can see it's added a lot of that code for me automatically, which is sort of very nice. Okay, so what we need to do here, I'll leave that return null for now, give us a bit of space. We now need to inflate our layout. We need to essentially sort of create the object, and then we need to get the data from that and put that into our image holder. So that's what this function actually does. So we're going to put type view equals layout inflator dot from, and we're going to use the parameter that's been passed to us, group view group dot get context dot inflate. And it's going to be r.layout, and you probably remember this one, browse. Okay, so we've now inflated the XML, the layout effectively, and we've now got a view object. So what we now need to do is use the Flickr image view holder constructor, or we need to create a new object effectively. So we're going to type Flickr image view holder, and we'll just call that Flickr image view holder equals new Flickr, and of course it's just going to be a view because that's what we're passing. So that then creates the Flickr image view holder object, and of course we can just return that then, and that's what this function is all about. It's creating the object for us. So I'm just going to return Flickr view holder like so and get rid of this other one. Okay, we've also got another important method that we want to override, which we'll come back to, but I just want to show you what that one is, and that's onBind view holder. And that's probably going to be one of the most important overrides. Now, what onBind view holder does is anytime there's an object, or a view I should say, that is on screen that needs to be updated, this method is called automatically. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some smart code in here to download, using the Picasso tool, the thumbnail to the image that we want. So we're not going to try and download all the images because of course that would be quite wasteful when using excess memory, very inefficient. We're only going to download try and download the images that are on screen effectively. And that's the beauty of the on-bind view holder. It's going to handle that for us automatically. And what we'll do is we'll add some logging just so you can actually see how that works. But we'll come back to that. But one other thing that we can do, we can perhaps override the let's override the get item count as well, just in case we need that. I'm not sure that we're going to need that yet. So that just returns how many items have been found in our photos list. So we can do something like return null not equal to photos list, mPhotos list dot size or 0. So essentially what that line is telling us is if mPhotos list is null, it's going to return 0. Otherwise, it's going to return however many elements there are in that object. If we didn't include that first test, if it hadn't been initialized, we would actually get an error. So this is just one way of just preventing it by checking for null as well. Okay, so we'll come back to that, and it's still going to be complaining. It's probably wanting to know about the unbind view holder, as you can see on the screen there, but we're going to come back and implement that. All right, now we need to go to main activity. What we need to do here is we need to create our recycler view and our view adapter, because this is ultimately where those two are going to be, or where the view adapter is going to be called from, and the view is going to be created. So we're going to go into our main activity. And we're going to create some variables. Let's create a log first. File string. We've seen this before. Log tag equals, and we'll call this one main activity for logging purposes. We now need to have a list of our photos. And that's going to come from our JSON parser. And we'll call that mPhotos list to be consistent. Oops. And we'll may as well initialize it as an array list because we know what we want to do at this point in time. And of course that will be updated a little bit later on. We now need to have a recycler view. We'll call that just mRecycler view. Then we also need our adapter, our Flickr image view adapter. And just to make it, we'll call it the full name. Okay, so next thing we need to do, if you recall, we had functionality built into this main class, so it used the get Flickr JSON data to download our data. But what we want to do is we want to override that so that once it's successfully downloaded and passed the JSON data, it then initializes the adapter. So in other words, it goes through 3 steps. So we've got the very base class, if you recall, that downloaded the actual string sort of contents only from the JSON file. We then extended that with get Flickr JSON data, and that passes the JSON data and creates the photo objects as a list. So we now want to extend it yet again so that both those methods are called and used, or processes are invoked, if you will. But then once that's all completed, we want to create our adapters and ultimately display this stuff on the screen. So what we need to do is just create yet another async task, which will be in this method. Now I know I created this fragment, and we are going to talk about that fragments later in the course, but for now I'm going to remove that. We don't need that at this time. I'm going to add this bit of code here now. So we're going to do okay, so let's create that class, public class process photos. We'll call it process photos, and it's going to extend from get JSON data, which is our class, which I mentioned, which does the parsing of the JSON data. So we need a constructor. We're going to initialize, as you can see, the default constructor. So in other words, we're going to ensure that the JSON data gets initialized, and that's all we need to do there. But we also want to set up an execute method. Public void execute. So we'll do a super.execute first. Then we'll do a process data, and we're going to create that class shortly. Process data equals new process data. Execute, like so. And we're going to put that class in here. Public class process data extends download JSON data. So we're going to do super.onPost execute string the web data. Whoops. I'm going to explain all this in detail shortly. So we'll do a whoops. Now that should be, I missed out a line there, be protected, void, on post execute. So after we've finished, that's what that should have been. Okay. Okay, now here's where it gets interesting. We're going to put Flickr. This is the point now where we've got the data. We're going to set up our adapter equals new Flickr recycler view adapter. And we're going to pass it the context, which will be main activity.this. And we're going to do get m photos. Now we're going to create a method in the subclass shortly to do that. So that's going to initialize our adapter, and it'll know where to start updating it from. And then we also need to add that adapter to our view. So we're going to type m recycler view dot set adapter, and it's going to be the Flickr adapter. And that will be literally all we need to do once we implement that. So we need to go down here to fix this up, get m photos. So to do that, okay, I just need to close that because somehow I opened that window, so I'll do that. And then we need to go back to our get JSON data, because if you recall, that's where our photos, our photo objects are created. So we just need a getter there so that we can access that higher up in the chain. So I'm going to put the getter. Let's just put it here. So I'm just going to create a getter for m photos, but I'm going to call it m photos. Okay, and that's so that we can access that higher up the chain back in main activity. Okay, the other thing I'll do here is the extra code we've got for our fragment. We're not going to be using that now, so I'm going to delete that for now. I'm going to delete that, well, I'll leave that there for now, but we'll be deleting that get JSON data as well shortly. The other thing that I forgot to do in get JSON data, I'm just going to go in there and make a small change. So I'm going to change this code here a little bit, because this will crash otherwise now, because at this point it's now presuming it's going to be a URL and not a list of parameters. So if we left this as it was, it would probably crash. So what we want to do instead is put parameter equals destination URI dot toString. So we're going to create just an object which has just got one element, if you will, which is our current destination. We're going to pass that option. So that will avoid a crash elsewhere now that we're extending the class at a higher level. Alright, I'm going to stop this video here and we'll continue on and finish this in the next video.